In this video, we will discuss notes receivable. Sige, let's start.
Bigla kang sumakses eh.
So what are notes receivable? Notes receivable are claims supported by formal promises to pay in the form of promissory notes. So, i-compare natin ang notes receivable sa ibang receivables. First, we have accounts receivable. Ang accounts receivable are receivables that are supported by informal or verbal promises to pay. Samantalang yung notes receivable naman, it is supported by formal promises to pay in the form of promissory notes. So for example, some of us may experience na with promissory notes, especially kapag hindi tayo nakakabayad ng tuition on time. So pinapapirma tayo ng promissory note at doon nakalagay kung kailan tayo magbabayad. Promissory notes are not just limited sa schools. May mga businesses na ginagamit nila ito to secure future payments. And usually may interest element ito na nakastate sa mismong note. So businesses, for example, mga nagbebenta ng mga high value items such as cars, minsan laptops. So to afford people to buy, minsan pinapapirma nila ng promissory note. So in that case, hindi na siya accounts receivable. Notes receivable na siya. So i-compare naman natin yung notes receivable sa loans receivable. Ang loans receivable, this account is exclusively used for and by financial institutions. Samantalang notes receivable, hindi siya specific for financial institutions only. So ano bang examples ng financial institutions? Banks, lending companies, lending cooperatives, pawn shops, etc. So kapag you're dealing with them, any transaction that deals with them, loans receivable or payable ang gagamitin nating account. Now, from their perspective, as financial institution, gagamitin nilang account ay loans receivable. Samantalang ang notes receivable, hindi siya exclusive for financial institutions. Again, pwede siyang gamitin ng kahit anong business, service, manufacturing, etc. So now, we have compared accounts, notes, and loans receivable. Now, let's dive deeper sa notes receivable, which we will call NR for short. Next, in classifying NRs, we have two. First is, interest-bearing ba siya or non-interest-bearing? So, ang interest-bearing notes receivables have interest na nakastate sa mismong note. Samantalang ang non-interest bearing notes receivable, wala siyang interest rate na nakasabi sa note. So yun lang ang difference niya, guys. Kaso there's a big asterisk dito sa non-interest bearing notes receivable. Kasi kahit wala siyang stated interest rate, meron pa rin itong interest element. Bakit? Kasi na-discuss natin yan sa time value of money na lahat ng contractual obligations to receive cash, meron pa rin itong interest element. Ngayon, the face amount, let's say 1,200,000 yung note. Tapos, matatanggap mo siya lump sum after 5 years. Is it fair to measure it now as 1,200,000? So, the answer is no. Dun sa 1,200,000 note na yun, included na dun ang interest element. And we can separate that using various techniques. To be more specific, ang effective interest method, which we will deal later. So again, lahat ng notes ay may interest, regardless whether interest-bearing siya or non-interest-bearing. So ang ibig sabihin lang ng interest-bearing dito sa interest-bearing NR ay meron siyang stated interest rate na nakasabi sa mismong note. Samantalang ang non-interest bearing notes receivable naman, wala siyang interest rate sa mismong note. Pero, meron pa rin siyang imputed rate, which we can use to separate the principal and the interest element. Next, we will discuss measurement ng notes receivable. So first, i-classify muna natin yung notes as either short-term or long-term. Short-term siya if it is collectible within 1 year, samantalang long-term siya if collectible beyond 1 year. Next, i-classify natin siya based sa interest. Okay? Sa short-term receivables, we don't have to classify them kasi same lang ang magiging treatment sa kanila. Samantalang sa long-term receivables, we have to classify them kasi iba-iba ang treatment depende sa interest rate. Now, if yung stated interest rate ay reasonable, so for example, 12% yung market rate, tapos yung stated rate is let's say 12, 11, 13, or more than 12, for example, 14, 15%. So we consider that reasonable. Next, we also have unreasonable interest. So for example, kanina na 12% yung interest rate, tapos yung stated interest rate 5%, 4%, 6%. So we consider that unreasonable. And meron ding mga notes na wala talagang interest at all. So again, we have to classify them kasi magkakaroon ng different treatment depende sa interest rate. So next, we have initial measurement or paano natin siya i-measure at inception or sa simula. So kapag short-term receivable, regardless whether may stated interest rate or wala, we will measure them at face amount. Meaning, kung magkano yung nakalagay dun sa note, ganun din natin siya i-measure. Same dito sa long-term notes receivable na may reasonable interest rate, we will initially measure them at face amount. Paano naman tong with unreasonable interest rate at non-interest bearing notes receivable? So we will measure them at present value. So present value computations are discussed sa time value of money. Ibig sabihin lang din nito is that yung face amount is not equal sa present value. And between the two, we will choose the present value, the more accurate amount. Samantalang dito naman sa taas, yung short term at saka yung long term, yung face amount is equal to the present value. Okay? Kaya nilagay na natin dito, face amount, kasi hindi na natin kailangan mag-compute pa ng present value. Next, itong subsequent measurement we will discuss in a while. Next, ano naman tong stated versus effective interest rate? Again, ang stated interest rate, also known as nominal rate, it is the rate stated in the promissory note itself. Okay? So ano naman tong effective interest rate? Tinatawag din itong imputed rate, market rate. Okay? So, it is the rate that exactly discounts estimated future cash payments or receipts throughout the expected life of the financial instrument. So, mas magigets natin to siya pag pupunta na tayo sa mga problems. Now, ano-ano nga ba yung sources or pwede natin mapagkuhanan ng effective interest rate? This rate can be, number 1, the prevailing rate for a similar instrument of an issuer with similar credit rating. So for example, ang isang bangko, kinaklasify niya yung mga borrowers according to credit rating. Usually, pag mas maganda yung credit rating mo, mas mababa yung risk and mababa din ang interest na ibibigay sa'yo. Now, if mababa or unfavorable yung credit rating mo, usually mas mataas yung interest rate ang ibibigay sa iyo. Now, let's say si Juan gusto niyang humiram sa Bank X. Iko-compare yung credit rating niya sa mga katulad niya. Let's say, ang applicable na rate para sa kanya ay 12%. So yun ang ating effective interest rate. Now, let's say si Pedro, high risk. Unfavorable ang kanyang credit rating. Mataas ang interest rate, let's say 15%, then yun ang ating effective interest rate. Next, pwede ring effective interest rate, ito, the rate that discounts the face amount to the cash price equivalent. So, itong cash price equivalent, we will explain in a while. But in a nutshell, sometimes yung installment price o yung presyo kapag ikaw ay magbabayad through installments is higher than the cash price equivalent or yung price na kung saan babayaran mo siya with cash. And yung difference ng dalawa is sa point of view ng nagbenta, hindi niya yun pwedeng i-recognize ng isang bagsak over one period. I-recognize niya yun over several periods. Ngayon, we have to determine anong rate ang gagamitin natin that will discount or that will allocate the interest rate over the life of the note. Parang PPE lang, no? So, kung ano man yung rate na yon, tatawagin din natin siyang effective interest rate. Again, dalawa ang pwedeng maging sources ng effective interest rate. Pwedeng prevailing rate or market rate of a similar instrument or the rate that exactly discounts the face amount to its cash price equivalent. Next, ito, the difference between the present value and the face amount is initially recognized as unearned interest and subsequently recognized as interest revenue under effective interest method. So using effective interest method, we can allocate the unearned interest, which is a difference between the cash price equivalent and the face amount, over the life or over the periods covered by the note. Next, focus naman tayo sa cash price equivalent. The fair value of receivables may be measured in relation to the fair value of the asset given up in exchange for the receivable. So, ano ba ang give up ng entity? Usually, for example, old equipment or inventory. So, kunin natin ang fair value nun. So, the fair value is the cash price equivalent of the non-cash asset given up. So, for example, nakabenta tayo ng inventory at nag-issue tayo ng note. Ang note is let's say 1,200,000 samantalang ang cash price equivalent nun or if isa-settle yung transaction through cash is 1 million lang. So, mas mainam na i-record natin ang transaction at its cash price equivalent or kung magkano siya masasettle if ever cash ang gamitin. Again, balikan lang natin, no? If may difference man sa face amount at saka ang cash price equivalent, we will treat that as interest revenue. Next, cash price equivalent. It is amount that would have been paid if the transaction was settled using cash instead of installment basis. So the difference between the cash price equivalent and installment price is treated as interest revenue na unti-unti rin nating i-recognize over the periods covered by the note. Next, punta naman tayo sa subsequent measurement. Receivables measured at face amount are subsequently measured at recoverable historical cost. So ano ba tong recoverable historical cost? It represents the amount of cash expected to be recovered from the contractual cash flows of the receivable. That is yung face amount, which is yung initial recognition, minus subsequent repayments ng principal and minus any reduction for impairment. So, ang impairment, i-discuss natin later on. Basta mababawasan ang face amount by subsequent repayments. So, again, ano-ano nga ba yung mga receivables na measured at face amount? So, we have short-term notes receivable, regardless whether may stated interest rate or wala. And long-term notes receivable na may reasonable interest rate. So, silang dalawa, they are subsequently measured at recoverable historical cost. Next, paano naman yung mga receivables measured at present value? So, they are measured at amortized cost. So, compare lang natin kanina, no? Kanina, it's recoverable historical cost or NRV, net realizable value. Ngayon, kapag measured siya at present value, we will measure them at amortized cost, yung subsequent measurement. So what is amortized cost? The present value or yung initial measurement minus principal repayments. So kung may bayad sa principal amount plus or minus, again, mas maiintindihan natin to pag nasa problem na tayo. Pero pwede kasing pa-plus or pwedeng pa-minus. Okay? Yung amortization. So ano nga ba tong amortization? To compute cumulative amortization, the effective interest method is used. So ano nga ba tong effective interest method? It is a method of calculating the amortized cost, which is yung goal natin, okay, subsequent measurement, by allocating the interest income or interest expense, depende kung kaninong perspective, over the relevant period ng note. So again, mas maiintindihan natin to siya pag pupunta na tayo sa mga word problems. So ganito yung format ng amortization na gagamitin natin. So we will start with date, tapos collections. Hindi lang siya exclusive sa principal. So pwede din collections pati interest. Depende sa problem. Next, we have interest income, which is based sa effective interest rate, not stated rate. Tapos, based din dito sa pinaka-latest na carrying amount. Next, amortization. So, ang amortization, it could be positive or negative. In short, net effect siya ng dalawang ito. So, if mas malaki ang collections kaysa sa interest income, we can expect na pa-minus yung amortization. Kasi nga, collections decrease the carrying amount of the note. Samantalang interest income, increase naman. What if mas malaki ang interest income kaysa sa collections? Yes, may mga ganong instances. So, we can expect the amortization na pa-plus. Okay? So, madadagdagan ang present value ng note. Again, this is a case-to-case basis. So, that's how the amortization table works, which you will understand deeper pagdating na natin sa mga problem. So, sa susunod na video, we will discuss with word problems. So, see you sa susunod na video.